Hello, I'm Ian Bland, Head of Motorcycle Marketing at Suzuki GB. And today I'm joined by my colleague Steve Hacklett, our Product Planning Manager, to tell you about the new V-Strom 800DE. The V-Strom 800DE is clearly a member of the V-Strom family, and it fits in between our existing V-Strom 650 models and the top of the range 1050 models. But it's also an 800, which means that it's related to our new GSX 8S. So, Steve, picking up on those themes, what would you say are the key points for our customers to know about the 800DE?
So without question, Ian, the new V-Strom 800DE is born to explore. And actually the model name gives us a really useful framework to talk about what the bike's really excellent at. So the V-Strom, all the heritage and the decades of experience that Suzuki have got with the V-Strom in terms of versatility, reliability, and a really capable machine. The 800, all about the new engine, the new frame design, and then DE about new levels of off-road capability for the bike.
Sounds interesting. Let's actually tackle those in reverse order, because the last one, the DE, off-road ability, I know that the new 800DE has got more than any of its predecessors. So tell us about the off-road capability.
Yeah, so starting at the front of the bike, we've got the selection of a 21-inch front wheel. Not only the size of the wheel, but also the construction as well. So obviously spokes, both front and rear, meaning greater levels of flex and compliance on tougher terrain. Beyond the actual wheel size and the composition, we've then got the tyres and all important tubes. So both the front and the rear do use a tube type design. So in the unfortunate incident on rough terrain that any damage was sustained to the rim, it means that we can still retain air pressure within the tyre and the rider can still ride their bike out to go and get repairs made to it.
Great. And the suspension is different than previous models?
Yep, absolutely. So two key things to mention on the suspension. One is the level of travel. So there's 220mm travel from the forks, also in the rear wheel travel offered by the rear monoshock. And then coincidentally, you've also got 220mm also pertains to the ground clearance for the bike as well. But beyond the actual travel is then the level of adjustability. So these are fully adjustable forks, both front and rear with mechanical adjustment.
Wow. So in terms of the chassis, it's really purpose-built for going off tarmac roads and exploring further, as you say, born to explore. But it's not just the chassis that makes it so capable off-road. Tell us about the electronics.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a baseline of electronics that can be used to benefit on any surface, and that is the 3 different power modes. So full power is still accessible in any of the 3 modes, but it's how sharp that ramp is for a given level of throttle input. So you've got A as the most aggressive mode, and then you've got B, which is slightly softer, and then C, which is the softest, so ideal for things like wet tarmac. Beyond power modes, you've then got traction control modes, and again, there's 3 levels of adjustability, so it can be tuned to the rider's preference or the conditions they find themselves in. The bit that's very specific to the DE and the on loose surface is the G mode, which is for gravel. So on a loose surface, what it means is there's a really early activation, but for an experienced rider, it means while using this mode, you then get a lower level of engine power that allows you to move into and hold slides on really loose surfaces.
That sounds great, and brings me on to the ABS, because I think that's tuned for off-road as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the key thing here is adjustability. So for the right rider on the right surface to have the right settings that are going to make their ride really enjoyable. The ABS has got 2 modes of adjustability, so you can have a slightly more active or a slightly less active status for the ABS. And then the critical thing is for experienced riders that want to completely lock the rear off-road to intentionally help better control the bike, we can turn that rear ABS off altogether.
One of the other things that we've not really mentioned so far is actually the riding position, which is great for standing when you're off-road.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about the bike's more holistic abilities later on, but specifically focusing on this DE element, the chassis design and the ergonomics of the rider, even the engine design is impacted on that really rider forward position, close to the bars, and the ability to stand up and see over the screen as well.
And I think even things like the way that the aluminium bars have been constructed and the dimensions on this one to have enough flex for that off-road riding, just the attention to detail to make it a great ride off-road as well as on-road.
Yeah, as you say, it goes beyond what you can see superficially. As you say, the grade of aluminium that has been selected is super strong, but has got more flex and more compliance, so it can deal with rougher terrain. And then some of the other items that you can see that are standard on the bike, things like the handguards, things like the plastic bash plate, even the rad guard that's standard on the machine as well.
And talking about standard things, it's worth noting that the bike we've got here today has actually got the accessory larger, higher screen fitted. But as standard, the bike comes with a smaller screen, which is particularly for off-road use, so that when you're standing, it's easy visibility looking over.
Yeah, exactly that. And then you've got the 3 levels of mechanical adjustability. So this one is giving maximum coverage for more on-road usage. But as you say, because of that DE flavour that this bike has got to it, that small screen and the ability to put it in a lower position is absolutely critical for visibility when the rider's on the pegs and trying to survey the horizon when they're out on the trails.
The middle element of the V-Strom 800DE was the 800 bit, and today we've got the unidentical twin model. Its brother over in the background there, the GSX 8S, which shares some of the components with the DE. Can you tell us what's in common and what's different?
Yeah, so the 2 main facets here, we're talking about the overall engine, not including the silencer and exhaust system, and then the main frame itself. So if we look at the engine first, and there's a lot to unpack here. You've got a brand new parallel twin 776cc engine. Importantly, within the overall engine architecture is a really long stroke design, and this is what helps make it such a usable, flexible and torquey motor.
I know what you mean, because I'm fortunate to have been able to ride the 8S, and the engine really is torquey. There's constant thrust from low RPM, and yet the engine also revs really freely, and it's got a great sound.
Yep, the great noise coming from that 270 crank design. So this enables us to get all the character and all the positives that one might expect from a V-twin arrangement, everything from that low rumble at startup to the really gorgeous noise that you get from the engine as you're firing it out of the roundabouts as well. Beyond that, and some of the things that can be potential negatives with certain engine architectures, is you're not getting any vibiness or any negative vibration. The V-Stroms are famed for their ability to do long distances in comfort, so absolutely those sensations through the pegs, through the seat and through the handlebars are absolutely critical. The way the engineers have achieved this, we talked about the character coming from the 270 crank, but beyond that there's a new patented biaxial cross balancer system that means there are 2 balancers that are both at 90 degrees, both at the same distance from the center of the crank, and these ensure there's absolutely no unwanted vibration during the ride.
Sounds great. So, as well as the engine, is there anything else in common between the 2 800s?
Yeah, some of the performance metrics are actually slightly different on the 800DE, and this is because of the different exhaust and silencer system. You've got a really svelte silencer on the 8S, but you've got an even more free-flowing design because of the nature of what aesthetically is right for a dual-purpose machine like the 800DE, and that does add an extra kilowatt. So this one comes out at 84, I think 0.3 PS in terms of peak numbers, and then the torque is the same at 78, and these are at the same engine speeds. I think what's critical to hit on is, although the peak figures for the engine on both machines are very competitive, it's the journey there and it's the real-world usage that are really important. There's 2 main elements to that. One is, we talked about that low down grunt, the fact that you can come out of roundabouts in 3rd and 4th gear at really low RPM, that will make it flexible and usable for lots of different types of riders, but also on those longer distance once the rider's more tired as well, not having to be pinpoint in terms of your gear selection. Beyond that, it's the double overhead cam. For a twin engine, it is surprisingly free revving. So as well as all that grunt right down at the bottom, you've got a really meaty mid-range, and then all the way up to those peak figures as well.
And I think you mentioned that the long stroke design is part of what's giving that torque. But it also gives you that ability to be a bit lazy with the gear changes. But of course, the other thing that makes the gear changes so nice and pleasurable on these is the bi-directional quickshifter.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got up and down quickshifter, a really sort of dual faceted piece of technology. So the ability that in a more performance orientated setting, that without releasing the throttle, we can go all the way up through the gearbox. But then when we're coming down as well, no need to activate the clutch. Once you're rolling in 1st gear, up and down without usage of the clutch. But even on longer touring or when you get stuck in traffic, just the ability to use that quick shifter and not constantly have to operate the clutch are a real benefit for endurance as well.
Let's move on to look at the other parts common to the 800 platform, and that one of those is the frame. Now it's a steel frame, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Even the engine itself does impact on the frame design. That biaxial cross balancer has allowed us to make the engine package as small as possible while still delivering all those great benefits and great character, but it's then freed us up in terms of the chassis design. So the rider ergonomics to be really, really comfortable, to be able to maximise the fuel tank as well. But as you say, it's steel in design, so really suitable for this type of machine to give it the strength and the rugged character that it needs off-road, allied with a beefier subframe compared to the 8S to run 3-box luggage and a pillion, even on those rougher off-road situations. And the selection of steel as well, because in terms of design, those smaller strong sections have really allowed us, as I say, to maximise the fuel tank and maximise the rider ergonomics. If we'd selected aluminium, they'd have been bigger sections, aesthetically would have looked different, and it would have compromised some of those packaging constraints.
So in terms of the packaging, the engineers have done a great job of taking elements which suit both bikes, but then tailoring the bike where needs to be a great adventure bike and to give it the off-road capabilities that the DE model needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that tailoring means that you've got a common mainframe, albeit a different head angle between the two bikes. But once you go beyond that, that's when the bikes completely diverge to serve different riders with different needs. So different fuel tank, different swing arm, different subframe, completely different suspension and braking setups as well.
Well, of course, the starting point in the name, the 3 points that we were talking about at the start, is V-Strom, and the 800DE is a member of the V-Strom family, so that brings with it a number of expectations from the last 20 odd years of V-Stroms. So how does it fit, and what is making it a true V-Strom?
So the absolute founding principle here is versatility. The fact that all of the V-Stroms, this one included, are excellent at doing long distance, doing it in comfort, looking after the pillion and being a really usable machine. On this bike, it's everything from the large 20-litre fuel tank with the excellent 64 mpg, that means in excess of 280 miles riding range. Everything with the chassis design we talked about earlier, that mean the rider can get their hips closer towards the bars, so whether they're standing up or sitting down on long motorway runs, chasing beautiful new horizons, the fact that the bike's going to be rewarding to ride, but really, really comfortable too. And not just for the rider, for the passenger as well.
Yeah, so some of those V-Strom values are really key, and in addition to all its new extra off-road ability, they're bound to be things that many customers are looking for. And I know from my own experience, many thousands of miles on V-Stroms, that ability to go long distances and to carve around mountain passes, it's just part of what you get from a V-Strom, and it's great to hear that all of that's in the new 800DE. But how about the styling of the bike? How does that relate to V-Strom?
So it's important with such a strong name and the V-Strom family that we've built up over time and that we hear so lovingly about from our customers, that there are key elements that are retained. Not only the name, the use of the really striking RMZ style yellow that speaks to our off-road heritage, but also the beak design that we brought to the market with the original DRZ model. Beyond that though, complementing the new 800 engine and the all-new frame is a slightly tauter, slightly sharper design that speaks to this brand new V-Strom in the range.
Well, it certainly looks great. One of the other things that's going to help customers personalise it is the range of genuine Suzuki accessories. Can you just give us a few of the highlights of the range?
Starting off with luggage, so for that distance capability and the ability to do multi-day or week-long tours either in this country or abroad, there's a range of luggage options. So you've got tank bag options, you've got the quintessential aluminium style adventure looking panniers, but not only panniers, a top case as well, and they're available in 2 different colours, so the brushed aluminium look and then also a black version of that as well. Beyond those adventure style panniers, if somebody doesn't need quite as much capacity and they want a more shrink wrap design, there's then an integrated pannier and top box option. Or for those that don't want panniers, that are maybe going to use the bike to commute on and they want to use just a top box, there is an oversized 56 litre 2 helmet style top box as well. In terms of creature comforts, things like heated grips that will help complement with the handguards and the larger screen that's available for the bike as well. But then for the more off-road credentials, there's then a whole host of items there as well. There's more off-road, even more off-road orientated foot pegs. There's what we call the accessory bar, so some crash protection that runs higher here on the bike as well. There's fog light options, so if your adventures are going to take you off into the dark, you've got extra lighting so you can see the path ahead as well. And a really extensive range. So if people check out our website or download the brochure, and they can see the full range of personalisation that's available.
Thanks, Steve. Great to hear about all those wonderful new accessories and the opportunities that our customers are going to have to personalise the new V-Strom 800DE for their own riding requirements. Now, if you like what you've heard about the V-Strom 800DE today, then you'll probably be wondering when it's available in the UK. And I'm pleased to say it'll be in our dealerships in the spring. Meanwhile, please head over to the Suzuki Bikes website where you can find out more about the bikes, the accessories, the colours, finance options, and also where you can place your order now with our Reserve Now function and make sure that you're one of the first in the queue for a new V-Strom 800DE. Thanks very much for watching.